Hello everybody, my name is Jack McKenzie, and joining me on the mic as usual is the wonderful Chris Whitfield and Caitlin Penny commentary, and this is the Motorsport Recently Show, and this is also a very big week for the show, as this is a very big episode. This is the FIA WEC season preview for 2025. I'm very excited to get into this one. Guys, welcome along.
Thank you very much, Jack. What is Chris?
Chocolates!
Chris is dropping chocolates. No.
No! Don't drop them!
Amazing timing. Okay, whilst Chris composes himself, Caitlin, how are you?
Yeah, I'm okay, thanks. Just kind of vibing. I had fun watching the F175 show the other day. I'm sure we'll talk about that a bit more later, and even more probably on next week's show. But yeah, I've been having a good time, and yeah, ready to vibe with you guys.
That's fantastic, Chris. Are you able to compose yourself again? Have you gathered up all of your evening snacks?
I'm missing one. I appear to be missing. Oh, there it is.
There you go.
The world has been saved. The chocolates have been saved.
That's fantastic. Of course, you have to be all fueled up for this evening's episode. I'm very excited this week, not just because it's the WE season preview, but because I have got a new race helmet. So you'll notice my old race helmet is now taking place of the helmet that was there previously, and I will be debuting this race helmet that I've got here. If you're watching the video feed, at my first karting event of the year, and here it is. I'm very excited to showcase this one because I think it's a fantastic looking helmet. For those of you listening, not watching, it's a Bell helmet, and it's blue and it's white. Colors of Triple Crown Racing. It's not a custom one or anything. It's just one of the standard designs. But I think it looks fantastic, and I'm very excited to show this off to the world for the SEK season opener this weekend at Canberra, which I'll be racing at this weekend. Go 222. That's my cart. So
Yes.
Hopefully we open up with a good result for the first race. And while I put this
If you
helmet
can
back
get
in the
it
bag,
in the bag.
if I can get it in the bag, yes. There we go.
It does look
Okay.
very good, but we've got to, for the sake of our podcast viewers, we've got to give it
Yes.
its full name: the Belmet.
Yes, the Velmet. That's what we have to. That's what we referred to it as last week, and we'll be referring to it as that this week. Okay, enough small talk.
Helmet.
We should get into our preview for this year because we do like talking about sports car racing on this show, and the WEC is, of course, probably the biggest sports car racing series in the world. So let's talk about it. Let's start with our calendar for this year. We've got 8 races for this year. This is the joint second most number of races in a season, I believe. The most we've ever had is 9, and we've had a few seasons with 8 races, and this is one of those seasons. So we start off on the 28th of February at the Qatar 1812. I said 812 last week. I meant 1812.
Well, it's 1,000 between friends.
1,000 between friends, and I think it stops after 10 hours, doesn't it?
Yes.
What's the time limit for that race? Okay, yeah. So
It goes from
it's-
2 p.m. to midnight, local time.
Yeah. So whatever comes first, 1812 kilometers. I think it's kilometers, isn't it? Yes.
Yes.
Kilometers or 10 hours of racing. On the 20th of April, we're off to the 6 hours of Imola, which will be very exciting. We've visited Imola a few times with the WEC before. Then it's the precursor, effectively, to the 24 hours of Le Mans with the 6 hours of Spa-Francorchamps on the 10th of May. Followed by, of course, on the 14th to the 15th of June, it is the 24 hours of Le Mans. On the 13th of July, so a little under a month later, it's the 6 hours of Sao Paulo, followed by the Lone Star Le Mans on the 7th of September. The 6 hours of Fuji on the 28th of September is the penultimate race of the year, and we round off once again with the 8 hours of Bahrain on the 8th of November. Guys, it's a good-looking calendar. We've got quite a few classic tracks on the season roster for this year. What do we think of this one?
And Qatar's on it, too.
Yes.
Oh my goodness me. All right, fair enough. He's swinging out the gates already. Right, here we go.
It looks like a very classic World Endurance Championship meet. Nothing truly that stands out. I think it's basically the same as last year's calendar, isn't it? But it's to be expected. It's obviously it's going to have Le Mans on it and stuff like that. Yeah, I've just looked at it. It's exactly the same schedule as last year, with the races being on basically the same weekend every single time. The 8 Hours of Bahrain is maybe a week later, but looks like 6 Hours of Fuji is a couple of weeks later. But in terms of the order of the races, the length of the races, all of that, it's all exactly the same as last year. So honestly, there's not really much that we can say about that because it's just a typical WEC calendar.
Well, I would say what you can mention is that we had in the last couple of years, we've had Lone Star Le Mans and the 6 Hours of Sao Paulo return to the schedule, which were very, very welcome additions. And the Qatar race is a relatively new addition as well. But I think that's a fantastic looking calendar. And of course, we've got the 24 Hours of Le Mans in the middle of it, which I think everybody will be very, very excited about. Now, we've got a few key season points to talk about as well. So the maximum grid size has been increased from 37 to 40 cars, but that's not particularly relevant for this year, as we have 18 hypercars on the grid and 18 LMGT3 cars on the grid as well, with LMP2 joining the grid for Le Mans. So
I remember when LMP2 did the full season. It wasn't that long ago, but...
No, it was only a couple of seasons ago. Do we miss LMP2 from the full season, or do we think that what we've got now is the way to go?
I think it's more simplified now, so I think it's easier to follow, simply because there are fewer classes and fewer races to follow. But I think it takes away some opportunities for silver drivers to shine. I think LMP2 was very much sort of like a junior category to the LMP1 class, or the hypercar class as it is now, where you had kind of your younger racers trying out prototypes for the first time, and you also had some higher level amateur drivers as well. And I think that you don't really get to the same extent in LMGT3. Obviously, you do have a bronze driver in every car, but I just think that it was, I don't know, I just think it felt a bit more natural of a progression when you had people going from LMP2s into LMP1s, and you had your Matthew Vaxiviers and that lot kind of racing LMP2. But I think overall it doesn't really make that much of a difference. It's still the same premise. It's still multi-class racing, and I'm glad that we've got more cars in the top category than we used to have as well. I think that's an important point to make.
Yeah. That is definitely true. Obviously, we've still got... I think the way that the prototype progression works now these days is LMP2 mainly exists in the European and the Asian Le Mans series, as well as the IMSA, and IMSA as well, yeah. So that kind of acts as the development ladder. But I mean, good to have them back for Le Mans as we did last year, but possibly slightly missing from the WEC grid. But we've still got a massive field, which is still great.
Yeah, and like I said, I think it's more important that we have more cars in the Premier class, the one that the media headlines focus on and all of that, because at the end of the day, that's the class that brings people in. As much as we love our LMGT3s and our LMP2s and stuff, we can't kid ourselves. We are all more excited about Hypercar and about who's going to win Le Mans, for example. And I think that when you have fewer cars in that category but more LMP2s, it's not really a substitute, is it? I mean, I remember the golden era of LMP2 when you had like one Toyota on the hypercar grid and it was winning basically by default. That sucked, right? No one cared that you had great LMP2 racing because...
I mean, it was still good. Don't get me wrong, it was still good.
Yeah, but... I don't know. Le Mans wasn't as fun.
I think there were, of course, a few years where LMP2 cars, well, actually, mainly, I think it was 2017, the last year that we had the 919 Porsche, where the Jackie Chan LMP2 car almost won the race outright. If the Porsche had been stopped for any longer, there was a genuine chance that an LMP2 car could have won outright. And we have come close to LMP2 outright victories when they shouldn't necessarily have been able to win outright across sports car racing. But I think you're right. The lack of LMP2s almost speaks to the success of the 18-car strong hypercar field that we've got for this year. And obviously, it was a strong start last year, but I'd say that it's almost even stronger this year, which is fantastic.
And it's been increased. The reason it's been increased, for those that don't know, is actually because there's now a new clause in the rule book that states that every hypercar has to have 2 entries. Like, every hypercar manufacturer has to have 2 entries, which is why you don't see like the Van Collis or the
Isotta Fraschini.
The Isotta franchise.
The Isotta franchisee or Isotta
Isotta
Fraschini.
Fraschini, yes.
Or the
Lamborghini's not here anymore.
Yeah.
Well, the Lambo was kind of, well,
it was a bit of a half-baked entry in that first year. I mean, as we said in our Daytona preview, we hope that the program improves, but at the rate that it had been going up until this point, it wouldn't have worked in the WEC for this year.
Now, the Lamborghini program, of course, even though it's not in WEC, it's actually in IMSA, run by, I believe, Riley Technologies is running that program.
I thought it was Iron Lynx that were responsible.
They
were for a while.
They were, but now it's
who's responsible for it now?
Riley.
Okay.
And they're just doing the endurance events, I believe, in IMSA.
That probably makes sense. Well, I mean, I think it would be good for them to get more running under their belt because they desperately need it. But it's unfortunately it's just not competitive at the moment. That is a talking point for this season. So we've got no boutique manufacturers for this year, and we've got no Lamborghini either. But we should talk about some of the manufacturers and teams that we do have because the number 6 Porsche Penske Motorsport car will be defending their Hypercar Drivers' Championship, albeit with an adjusted lineup. So the number 6 car will be driven by defending champions Kevin Estre and Lawrence Van Tour for the full season, with Matt Campbell drafted in as part of their 3-driver lineup for some of the races, which will mainly include Le Mans. This car is, of course, joined by the number 5 car, which will be driven by Michael Christensen, Julian Andlauer, and Mathieu Jaminet, who is their 3rd driver, again, for some of the longer races and also for Le Mans as well.
Jam, as we call him.
Well, it was Cam Jam when he's driving with Matt Campbell, but he's not driving with Matt Campbell this year.
Damn, I like.
So they're defending their Hypercar champions, their Hypercar championship, and Toyota will be defending their manufacturer's titles. So they're obviously bringing 2 cars, as we've just mentioned that every Hypercar has to have 2. The number 7 car will be driven by Mike Conway, Kamui Kobayashi, and Nick De Vries, and the number 8 car will be driven by Sebastian Buemi, Brendan Hartley, and Ryo Hirakawa. So no real changes to the Toyota lineup, but still a strong as usual lineup for Toyota Gazoo Racing. So they will both Porsche and Toyota will probably be major contenders for the championship this year, as they have been in previous years. Should we move on a little bit as well? Ferrari, of course, the other major player in the context of the championship, and they will be looking for their 3rd Le Mans win in a row, again with effectively an unchanged lineup. So the number 50 car will be driven by Antonio Fuoco, Miguel Molina, and Nicholas Nielsen, with the 51 car driven by James Collado, Antonio Giovinazzi, and Alessandro Pierre Guidi. Which of those... So obviously, Toyota, Ferrari, and Porsche, they've emerged in the last few years as the sort of front runners of the World Endurance Championship at the moment. Which of those manufacturers do you think enters 2025 looking the strongest?
I think it might be Ferrari, just because they always. The thing about Ferrari is, and this is also true in Formula One as well, they start off really well, as you know. They start off very well, and then they sort of peter out a little bit. Then you'd see like the Porsches taking a few wins here and there, and then Toyota's like just like last year, Toyota's like coming back. They come back and they're nearly there, and it's like I always say, don't count any of them out.
So you are right on that front. So the number 50 car that was driven by Antonio Fuoco, Miguel Molina, and Nicholas Nielsen, they started the season strongest of the two Ferraris last season. So they started with a sixth, a fourth, a third, and then they of course won Le Mans. They followed that up with sixth position at Sao Paulo, followed by third position at Kota, and then it sort of fell apart towards the end with a ninth place at Fuji and an 11th place at Bahrain. The start to the season wasn't quite as strong for the other Ferraris, so they finished 12th at Qatar, 7th at Imola, and 4th at Spa before finishing 3rd at Le Mans. So you are right, they had a strong start to the season, but it got a little bit weaker as the season progressed. Whereas I think the Porsches were obviously very consistent throughout, and the Toyotas were a little bit more consistent as well. So you think Ferrari comes in as the strongest?
Right now, yes.
Okay.
Although you haven't mentioned, there's a third one.
There is a third one. I think we'll get to that in
There's a third one
a little bit later in the show. Caitlin, do you think Toyota, Porsche, or Ferrari, which do you think comes in as the strongest out of those three?
I am not sure I know enough about the World Endurance Championship and the state of sports cars as they are right now. I know that is a little bit of a cop-out, but I guess one thing I would note is that the Ferrari is 2 years younger than the Toyota. I feel like, on one hand, that means that Toyota has been developing the car for longer. On the other hand, I think that probably means that the Toyota has reached its potential when we don't yet know if the Ferrari has. I also think Ferrari will be very hungry for Le Mans in particular. They had their taste of success a couple of years ago, and they will be absolutely fired up, and they will fully believe that they can do it again this year. But Chris is right, there is another option, and I think you are about to get onto that.
I can move through my agenda to get to that in a moment. But it's funny, I should mention with Toyota being a little bit older. So what I do, I remember writing a video on this a little while ago, is that the Toyota entered development before the hypercar regulations were 100% drafted. So what kind of happened was Toyota still were able to bring a fantastic race car to the World Endurance Championship, but it's my understanding that it wasn't as optimized as it possibly could have been if they'd been able to develop it in accordance with the 100% completed regulations, because they of course had to make a few adjustments to make it work. It's not that the Toyota has been uncompetitive by any means, because they've already secured championships in the 2 years that we've been racing with the converged prototype class. But unless they've made major changes to that car in the last couple of years, I don't think the GR010. It's sort of an imperfect race car, and that might be evident in the fact that Porsche and Ferrari have been able to give that car a bit of a run for its money in the last couple of years. With the mention of the third Ferrari, we should mention. I'll jump through to our privateers title. So Jota will not be defending their privateer. So obviously, we should mention that the way the WEC works is that you have a championship for the main factory prototype teams, but then there's also a championship within a championship that is for the privateer entries. Last year that was won by Jota whilst they were racing the Porsche 963 as a customer team. They will of course not be doing that anymore, as they will be racing the Cadillac for this year, as we discussed at length on last week's episode of the show. If you want to learn a little bit more about that, go and check that episode out. So we've got two cars going head-to-head for this year. We've got the AF Corsa number 83, which is the third 499P Ferrari on the grid. This car will be driven by Phil Hansen, Robert Kubica, and Yiffy Yi, and they will be going up against the Proton Competition number 99 Porsche 963 of Neil Yarni, Nico Pino, and Nico Veron.
I think actually the AF Corsa car, I think you can basically count that as a third factory entry.
Well, it effectively is, because it's run by the same organisation.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think it's fair to say they have the advantage coming into the season. I think it's a little bit of a shame there's only two cars in that like subcategory, but that's to be expected, you know. And I'm kind of looking forward to cheering on the underdogs. That's always one thing. One thing I am noting though is that didn't the Hertz Team Jota car used to be considered the number 38? Didn't that used to be considered a I think that's when they had a Porsche, right? They were,
but they weren't the factory.
They were privateer.
They were privateer. So Porsche Penske Motorsport is the only official factory team.
Yeah.
So I think Jota were the first. They were the first non-factory team to win out. It's my understanding that they were the first. Oh no, hang on. So who was the first non-factory team to win outright in this current category?
Sorry, no.
I think it was Rebellion, I believe.
But no. But that was LMP1. So I mean, like.
No, I mean like during the grandfather era.
Oh, okay,
yeah, grandfather, in the Toyota and the.
Yeah. No, sorry. That's what I was saying. That like I think they used to be a customer team.
Yeah.
And now they're showing up as a manufacturer team because they're paired up with Cadillac. So
yeah.
It's interesting that they've got full professional backing now.
Yeah, I think what Jota realized is that they weren't going to be able to compete properly if they weren't a fully fledged factory team. Obviously, I've just gone through to verify that now. They were the first non-factory team to win outright, as is my understanding, with the 963. I haven't found another non-factory team that's won outright. The second team, of course, to do that was AF Corsa with their 499P.
At Coda.
Yeah. But I think they realised that they weren't going to be able to compete for a championship in the same way that a fully fledged factory outfit were going to compete.
Although, in fairness, they did come damn close.
Oh, no, yeah, absolutely.
They came awfully close to it. And they surprised a lot of people. I was actually at my local airport watching the Spa race and was impressed by how they did. Like it was great watching that.
Well, I remember when Jota came in, they were very adamant that they were going to be taken seriously as proper contenders, and I think they've certainly proven that, and they've taken a fantastic opportunity in picking up the Cadillac program, and they've got an absolutely stellar lineup in this year that we talked about last week. So two cars, number 12 car will be driven by Alex Lynn, Norman Nato, and Will Stevens, with the 38 car being driven by Earl Bamber, Sebastian Bourdais, and Jensen Button. We talked about that last week, so if you'd like to know about that program, go and check out that episode. We talked about that at length, especially the liveries, which look fantastic. Now, Hypercar is, of course, not the only category that we need to talk about. There's still a lot going on in LMGT3 as well. I should mention that we have covered a lot of the Hypercar programs at length throughout the run of the rebooted Motorsport Recently Show, so you can hear a little bit about those. There has been some developments in LMGT3. So the defending we're just talking about Porsche, and we're going to talk about Porsche again. The defending Porsche LMGT3 champions and the Le Mans winners have had a shake-up after claiming positions 1 and 2 in the 2024 World Endurance Championship in that category. So it was previously 2 Manthey cars taking to the grid, making up the 2-car Porsche entry. Of course, it's a 2-car limit for GT3 cars, so only 2 cars from each manufacturer. Now we've got Iron Dames, the number 85 car that's going to be driven by Rahel Fry, Michelle Gatting, and Celia Martin. And the other Manthey car, this is the Manthey First Form number 92 car, which will be driven by Ryan Hardwick, Richard Leitz, and Ricardo Pera. It's my understanding, actually, that Richard Leitz is the only remaining driver on the Porsche GT lineup from last year, so it's effectively been an entire shake-up from last year.
Yes.
Do you think that will affect them at all? I mean, Porsche was so strong last year.
I don't think so. And also, Ryan Hardwick is now going to be... He's actually moved from... Because he was with the Proton car last year, the Proton Mustang, to now running in the Proton Porsche. I think this is...
No, the Manthey Porsche. Manthey Porsche.
Well, yeah, you know what I mean.
Yeah.
The First Form car. Because that's his company.
What is First Form? Do you know?
I believe it's a pharmaceutical... Hang on. We are checking.
I love how that joke survived.
Yeah.
The we are checking joke. Fantastic.
According to the Googles, First Form is a lifestyle brand that provides high-quality supplements and apparel.
Oh, nice. Well, there you go. First Form, Manthey for this year.
Founded on quality, built on service, and measured on results. Evidently, and also catchphrases.
This episode was brought to you by...
Nobody. We're not sponsored. We're not sponsored. There's another running gag for you that we've had this show.
Can we have our money now?
We'll get our money eventually. I think we've probably made about $2 since we've been doing this show, like for the combined earnings from this show.
Not bad, actually.
Not bad, actually. There are, of course, other changes happening at other manufacturers in LMGT3. Actually, quite a big season for Aston Martin across both categories in the World Endurance Championship. So in a previous episode, we talked about how Aston Martin is joining the grid. They're bringing 2 cars to the show. This is the Heart of Racing run entry. The 007 car will be driven by Tom Gamble, Gunn, Ross Gunn for Le Mans only, and Tinknell, Harry Tinknell will be doing the full season.
It's the man with the golden Ross gun.
Oh, that's very good. Very good. Fantastic. Ross Gunn only doing Le Mans. See, I'm finally embraced that joke.
And trying to find a Bond name for Harry. For Harry Tinknell.
Has there ever been a Bond villain called Harry? I don't know. I mean, you could say... I'm sure you could make a Tom Gamble tie-in with Casino Royale somehow.
You could.
You could do that. And of course, 009, the other car, Alex Riberas and Marco Sorensen doing the full season, and Roman De Angelis joining the lineup for Le Mans. So it should be mentioned, Ross Gunn and Roman De Angelis there. They're doing the IMSA program, or they're mainly Heart of Racing drivers in IMSA, and they're joining that lineup for Le Mans.
Which, by the way, the IMSA car has had its mufflers removed, so it will be
it's very loud
noise.
I think I remember we talked about that.
Can you imagine that thing, like running at like somewhere like Detroit or Long Beach, just having the noise just reverberating off the buildings?
Oh, it'd be fantastic. And I'm assuming it will sound fantastic going down the Mulsanne Straight as well at night. So that'll certainly be a sight to behold.
Get rid of the chicanes and we'll talk.
But what we haven't really talked about is the changes to Aston Martin in LMGT3. So Heart of Racing, number 27, that's not really a surprise. That's one of the two cars. This car will be driven by Mattia Drudi, Ian James, and Zachary Robichon. But there's also a new Aston Martin joining the grid for this season. And that is the Racing Spirit of Le Mans. But it's not Le Mans as in where the 24 Hours of Le Mans is. It's Le Mans with no space and an accent on the E, and that is another region in France, and that is where that team is based. Yeah, it's another place in France called Le Mans, but it's spelt differently, and it might be pronounced a little bit differently because the accent. Yeah, probably.
That's amazing. I genuinely never knew that. I just assumed it was Le Mans.
So this team has sort of risen through the GT ranks, and now they're in the full fat WEC, and this car will be driven by Eduardo Barrichello, and guess whose son he is? Derek de Boer and Valentin Hasse-Clot, I believe is how that is pronounced. I could be completely wrong.
Hasse-Clot, yeah.
Hasse-Clot. Okay, yeah, sorry, that's sort of bringing back a bit of a hallmark for me of not being able to pronounce names correctly from the original version of this show. So that's a new addition to the WEC grid. Heart of Racing has been around the block in the WEC before. They took over the what was the Canadian team called? The one that they took over it was what was it called? Northwest AMR. That was it. There we go.
Paul Dallalana's entry, yeah.
Paul Dallalana's entry. So they took over that one, and then they ended up running the full season last year, and of course running the Hypercar program and the GT3 program this year as well, and of course joined by that new team. So there is a bit of a shake-up there as well. We're going cross-cat. We're jumping around a little bit, I should mention. Oh yeah, sorry, Chris.
I've seen Eduardo Barrichello racing before.
Is he any good?
Actually, he is. He's quite a good talent. Rubens and I were talking about it a little bit about his son, and had to drop that name.
Gotta flex that, yeah.
Gotta flex the fact that I met Rubens
Mr. Whitfield. Mr. Whitfield moving in important circles.
Twice.
Where did you meet Rubens Barrichello? Tell us that story.
Toronto.
Oh yeah, we're in Toronto. For the IndyCar race.
The IndyCar, yeah, in 2019, where Caitlin met a certain ex-Formula One driver turned Andretti Global IndyCar driver.
I did indeed. Chris put me on a video call with Marcus Ericsson and Felix Rosenqvist and Simon Pagenaud. That was amazing.
Who had just gotten out of the car after winning it.
Yes. Oh my god. I will also say, so first of all, as for Eduardo Barrichello, I'm always worried when it comes to racing proteges that, you know, they're going to be compared to their dad, and it's going to be like, well, why aren't you winning Formula One Grand Prix yet? And it's like, you know, give him a chance.
Well, it's
Eduardo
good that we
Barrichello,
haven't compared him to Barrichello at all.
Well, even so. So Eduardo Barrichello, I mean, he's already older than Rubens was when he made his F1 debut. So if he is trying to beat him, then not quite there, I'm afraid. I will say he's good. He's not great. So don't expect too much from him just because his surname's Barrichello. I'd also like to quickly bring up Valentin Hasse-Clot. Sorry. It became a bit of a meme in our Daytona preview episode that I would bring up a driver and be like, I've seen him racing at obscure motorsport event X. Valentin Hasse-Clot is a driver I've seen racing as well. I saw him in 2015 as an 18-year-old racing in the Formula Renault 2.0 Euro Cup. He didn't do very well. He was not very fast on that day, unfortunately. But then again, he was very young and quite inexperienced. But the reason I remember him from that is because that is how young me discovered what a double-barreled surname was. My mum described him as a double-barreled Frenchman, and I found that so funny that I just remembered it forever. So even 10 years later, he is always the double-barreled Frenchman.
Oh my goodness, that's fantastic.
Frenchman. We're going to go. And also,
I'll have to bring that up to my mum, see if she even remembers that. She probably doesn't.
I think that's that's that name sticking for this double-barreled French. That's
clever. I love that.
That's what Mum called him. But anyway, yeah, he may not have loved that car, but he's done well since then. He's actually a class winner in the Le Mans Cup, apparently, with Racing Spirit of Le Mans, which
is this team.
Exactly, which I've just found out because of Wikipedia. No, sorry, my immense encyclopedic knowledge. Yes, I knew that already.
And
I didn't.
back to Dudu Barrichello.
Yep.
His nickname in Brazil.
I thought you just came up with that for a second there. It's like, that's a bit harsh.
No, that's what they call him.
I didn't know that was okay. Yeah, fair enough.
First of all, he's got some good racing lineage. He's related. He's the son of Rubens, of course. He's also got the cousin. He's cousins with both Alfonso and Felipe Giafoni, both IndyCar drivers, former IndyCar drivers, and he finished third in the Stock Car Pro Series Championship in Brazil, with 3 wins, 5 podiums, and 3 fastest laps. In the 3 years he's done it, finished third last year in the points.
So there you go.
In 2024.
Yeah, so he does have some good racing results, but I'm not seeing. Okay, I will be honest here. The Motorsport Recently Show is the house that Wikipedia built. So I should mention sometime. I mean, it's a good resource that is relied on heavily, but we of course are knowledgeable in our own ways. From what I can tell,
he was driving the number 91 Mobile Alley full-time Toyota Corolla with his dad in the number 111 entry.
Yeah. So what I can see here is that he doesn't seem to have, not that I can immediately see, he doesn't really seem to have a ton of sports car racing experience. A lot of this is sort of single driver, sort of open wheel or stock car pro series events. So it'll be interesting to see how he does in a team. And I think also, even if you don't, I mean, he's got good results, but even if you don't necessarily shine as an individual driver, sometimes I find that when certain drivers are put into a team, they seem to do a lot. They seem to be a lot stronger as sort of sports car drivers in those team events than they necessarily are in sort of single driver events, if that makes sense.
And he has competed as a like in a sort of teams scenario, because people seem to forget that in Brazil they have the Interlagos 500, I believe it is, whereupon you can basically, you have two drivers per car, similar to Bathurst.
Yeah.
It's usually the regular driver and a pro driver in it, like a celebrity pro driver.
Oh, okay. Yeah, that's yeah, I was going to say that does sound quite a lot like Bathurst. I mean, we don't really have the celebrity. I mean, sometimes you get high-profile drivers as co-drivers in Australia, but it's not necessarily, it has to be a celebrity pro, so to speak. But the two-driver thing does sound very very familiar to the Bathurst 1000 that we've got.
And it's interesting because of course, you remember when the Gold Coast used to have the Gold Coast 600 used to have the All-Star lineup, the All-Star Pro lineup. Like they actually had like professional drivers racing with the current supercars drivers.
But the supercars drivers are still professional drivers, though.
Yeah. Well, no, like.
Yeah.
What I mean is like the all-stars, if you will, like the all-star drivers.
Antonio Liuzzi and Alexander Prema, and anyway.
Jacques Villeneuve would do it.
Yep.
Dan Weldon was actually scheduled to in 2011, but never yet knew that he never would be.
Yeah, no, that's a shame.
I think we've spent a bit too much time on this.
Yes, let's move on. Because there are, of course, other manufacturers to talk about as well. We are jumping between categories a little bit here, but there are sort of manufacturers making moves in across categories. And one of those sort of outfits is the WRT BMW outfit. So on the hypercar front, so Kevin Magnussen will be, I believe he's doing the full season for BMW, is my understanding. So he will be making his BMW WEC debut. He's of course done the WEC before in some capacity, I believe. But this is going to be his first season with BMW in this championship. So the number 15 BMW M Hybrid V8 will be driven by Kevin Magnussen, Raffaele Marcello, and Dries Van Teur, with the number 20 car being driven by Robin Freins, Rene Rast, and Sheldon van der Linde.
Of course, many people don't know this, but Kevin Magnussen was actually, before he was signed for Haas to take over a few years ago from Nikita Mazepin, he actually was supposed to be on the grid for Peugeot in their program.
Oh yeah, I remember this. Yeah, I remember that happening.
Yeah, because he was a factory driver also with Cadillac as well, and plus you can't go wrong with that driver lineup. Plus, I am hopefully going to manifest a Vanthor versus Vanthor, a Vanthor v Vanthor race at finish to a race this season in WEC, because, well,
that would be cool. Yeah,
that'll be an interesting dinner table.
So, so this will be, I believe, Kevin Magnussen's first full season in the WEC. Yeah. He's of course done full seasons of IMSA before, but the last time he made sort of any appearance in WEC adjacent events was the 24 Hours of Le Mans in 2021, but he
Correct.
Probably wouldn't have been. He wasn't entered into the WEC, although that is still a round of the World Endurance Championship. So effectively, his WEC season debut, and he's doing it for BMW this season as well. We mentioned in the Daytona preview that BMW were a bit of a dark horse for that particular race, and they of course were. Do we think that sort of dark horseness, so to speak, will carry over into this year's WEC?
Well, like Chris says, there's nothing wrong with the driver lineup. The thing I'm always confused about with the WEC is the difference between the LMH and LMDH class. I always think it's a little bit of a conflict of interest, and of course BMW comes from the LMDH side of things, the more kind of American-based chassis. So I have to admit I'm more confident about them in IMSA than I am in the WEC. Can't really see them challenging at Le Mans or anything like that. But that's more to do with the car and the BOP and all of that stuff than it is to do with the drivers or the team themselves.
Well, it's not that LMDH cars have been uncompetitive in the World Endurance Championship. So the 963 is, of course, a LMDH car, and it's been able to win. Although the BMW has been a little bit inconsistent even in IMSA as well. Although they do have the occasional standout race. So while it didn't... They have won, of course, with that car before. And while it didn't necessarily work out for them at this year's Daytona 24 Hours, they were competitive right until the very end, until the nose sort of came loose and ruined their chances there as well. But I think that BMW lineup is very exciting. Chris, have you got anything else to say on BMW?
Not really. I'm just hopefully they can, because I believe they had a podium last year in WEC, but I think more good things are going to come with that organization.
You are right. They did have a podium in the WEC at the second last race at Fuji. That car was driven by Raffaele Marcello, Dries Van Teur, and Marco Wittmann, who Kevin Magnussen replaces, as Wittmann, I believe, is off to IMSA or has already started racing for BMW in IMSA already. WRT, of course, also running the LMGT3 program, and as we've mentioned plenty of times on this show already, WRT have had an immensely strong start to the sports car racing year in 2025, having won essentially all 3 of the races that they've entered with their M4 GT3. So they won the 24 Hours of Dubai, they won the endurance race at Abu Dhabi, and then they followed that up with a win at the Bathurst 12 Hour. And they, of course, bring 2 cars to the World Endurance Championship in the LMGT3 class. So the Bend Team WRT number 31 car will be driven by Timur Bogoslavsky, Augusto Farfus, and Yasser Shahin, who, of course, brings I'm assuming is the one responsible for the Bend addition to that name. And the Team WRT number 46 car, so the Bend gets dropped for that one. That car is going to be driven by Ahmed Al-Hati, Valentino Rossi, which is of course where the 46 comes from, and Kelvin van der Linde as well completes that lineup. Personally, I think BMW, assuming that WRT BMW with the M4, assuming that they can continue their momentum this year, they'll be ones to watch in that particular class. Do you guys share that sentiment?
Yeah, I really think, especially with the strong start to the year that WRT have had, I think that will give them the momentum that they'll be able to carry through the WEC season. You asked us to bring some predictions to this podcast. Would you like us to say that now, or because I've kind of just hinted at that, but yeah.
You have hinted at that. I think we may as well save the because we're so close to the end of the sort of preview section that we've almost hit predictions anyway. So I reckon we hang on to those for a little bit longer.
That's fair enough.
Chris, do you reckon? Do you think WRT will be as strong as I think they're going to be?
Absolutely. They won a few races last year. They'll be contending for the championship, I think.
Yeah, I'm trying to see.
And I think, and I'm going to make a very bold prediction here, they might be hoisting a certain trophy in a small town in France come June.
Oh, that is a bold prediction. I mean, wouldn't that be just a stellar year if they were able to do that? They will, of course, have to go up against Mercedes, who are returning to Le Mans this year for the first time since 1999, and they're, of course, doing that with Iron Lynx, as we mentioned on the show last week. And they're also making Mercedes. Can you believe this? They're making their WEC debut. They've never raced in the World Endurance Championship before, despite being such a high-profile manufacturer. And I believe the last time, correct me if I'm wrong, the last time Mercedes competed in a World Sports Car Championship of this level, so that is including prototypes and GT cars, the last time that they did something like this was the World Sports Car Championship.
Well, I know Mercedes is still a little bit touchy about what happened in 1999, so I just hope that this project takes off. Wait, no, sorry, no.
Oh, goodness me.
That reminds me, I just uploaded my photos of the 747 I took took photos of this afternoon.
Oh, my goodness.
I am quite proud of that, but I am sorry, Mercedes. Anyway, yeah, no, good to see Mercedes back. They have not had a good time with Le Mans over the years. There have been a couple of high-profile, literal disasters that Mercedes have been involved in there.
It's the first time since... it's actually the first time they've been competing in the actual championship proper since 1991.
Wow.
With the Sauber Mercedes effort.
Yeah.
And then... which had... very stacked driver lineup, if I must say. Had Mauro Baldi. Mauro Baldi was part of it.
Heinz-Harald
Frentzen and Karl Wendlinger and some German gentleman. I forget his name. It's on the tip of my Schumacher. It's on the tip.
I take it you don't just mean Heinz-Harald Frentzen again, but yeah. Anyway.
Yeah, that's it. Actually, Heinz-Harald Frentzen.
Okay.
But yeah, their last time at Le Mans was 1999 with the CLR, which had a slight design flaw, as we were to learn, where it would turn itself into an airplane if it hit a hill.
I heard this on another podcast I really like. It's called "It's Not the Car." It's a great podcast. Check out after this. Please finish this episode first before you go and listen to that show. They said on there, if I remember correctly, that you cannot buy an officially licensed car, licensed die-cast car of Mercedes' 1999 Le Mans car, because effectively after the disaster of that year, that car was effectively expunged from Mercedes' sports car racing record because they were so ashamed of it. But on a more positive note, so it's no hypercar program for Mercedes as of yet, but this GT car run by Iron Lynx will be driven, as we mentioned last week, will be driven by Matteo Cairoli, Matteo Crosoni, and Claudio Schiavone in the number 60 car. And in the number 61 car, it's heir apparent to the throne of Egypt, even though he's Dutch. That's Lynn Hodenius, who I need to make a correction about. He's joined by Maxime Martin and Christian Reed. Now, I should mention about Lynn Hodenius. I said last week that he had no prior sports car experience or no real sports car experience prior to this. That is not 100% true. I made a small mistake. What I found out afterwards was that he had done a season of the Porsche Sprint Challenge Southern Europe in 2023, where he won the Pro-Am class, and I think he'd also done a little bit of driving in a Cayman GT4, but I can't seem to find any information about that. If you know, please write to us. But that's his main sort of former sports car experience. But aside from that, he followed that up with a sort of middle of the road-ish result in Formula 4, and then comes into the World Endurance Championship at only 18 years old. He's from the Netherlands, but we joked last week he's heir apparent to the throne of Egypt. If you want the lore behind that joke, go check out the previous episode. But that is the Iron Lynx lineup for this year.
Or don't check it out. It's the stupidest thing I've ever said. And honestly, I still don't know where he actually gets his like money from. So for all I know, he might be the heir apparent to Egypt. I don't know. But yeah, I hope you at least left in the bit where I explained like my thought process behind that whole thing, because that was not my finest moment. But
somebody
anyway.
Please clip the do like an out of context. I can't wait for the inevitable Motorsport Recently out of context compilation to show up.
I do need to do that eventually. Yeah. No, that was funny. I got a kick out of that. I still found it funny when I was editing in
I'm not going to live that down. Let's move on.
Okay, let's talk a little bit more about Mercedes before we move on to the next manufacturer. Do we think that this is going to be a strong lineup for this year? I think it was the Mercedes AMG GT3, the record of which does not really need to be discussed because it has won basically everything under the sun. This is a new program for this year. Do you think that will put them on the back foot, or do you think that they'll be as strong as they are in basically everything else?
Well, we were talking about Lynn Hedenius. All of the GT3 lineups have to have a bronze-rated driver, and as a result of that, it tends to be that you're only as strong as your bronze. So it's really hard to tell kind of who is going to be competitive just by looking at the professionals in the lineup or by the team that runs the car. You can get some clues as to their performance from that, but at the end of the day, the bronze drivers are the biggest question mark, because you may not necessarily know how they're going to do, who they are. Some of them are a bit more unknown, and I think that's one of the things that makes LMGT3 so special and so different to all other categories. but it also makes it pretty unpredictable.
Fair enough. Chris, do you think that under the Stewart, because this is of course Iron Lynx's first year running Mercedes, do you think that they'll be able to extract the full performance of the Mercedes this year and potentially do well with it?
I think so. The Mercs certainly got the legs. If Iron Lynx can get the luck, they have a package.
I think it was a bit of a running joke last year that they were the unluckiest. Well, it might have been Iron Dames that got the most of this meme, but it was a bit of a running gag that Iron Lynx were the unluckiest team in the WEC last year. So let's hope that they have a little bit more.
It was the wrong half of the Iron Lynx project.
Let's hope they can have a little bit more luck this year. Obviously, Iron Lynx, they're joined by Iron Dames, who are running half of the Porsche program in LMGT3 this year as well. Let's move on to another manufacturer. So, Ben Keating is back in a Corvette in the WEC. TF Sport bringing 2 Corvettes again this year. So, the number 33 TF Sport car will be driven by Johnny Edgar, Daniel Hunkadea, and God himself, as I believe Chris has written into my show notes. That's Ben Keating. And the other car, the 81 car, this will be driven by Rui Andrade, Charlie Eastwood, and Tom Van Rompuy. Ben Keating, we've sung his praises plenty of times on this show. One of the best sort of non-professional drivers in the world, and he is back in a Corvette in the World Endurance Championship.
It does say God himself in your show notes, doesn't it? I wonder who put that there.
I wonder.
So the last...
the man with the keyboard. I will say, you have Tom Ferrier and Ben Keating together. You're just asking for the... basically, just give him the trophy now. Just give him the championship now, because remember, Ben Keating is a former World Endurance champion.
And he won the World Endurance Championship the last time he was in a Corvette in it. So he previously drove the GTE version of this car in LMGT3 AM in 2023, where he won the championship. Before committing more to LMP2, and now he's back in a GT car in the World Endurance Championship, which is funny because I thought he was done with GT cars, and apparently he's not. So there you go, Ben Keating back in the top European Endurance Series in a Corvette, which is very exciting. I wonder if he'll be able to repeat the success that he had last time he did this in a Corvette. Should we talk a little bit more about the Corvette, or do we want to move on to the last LMGT3 manufacturer that I've got listed on my notes?
I think...
Let's move on.
Okay, so we've spoken about Ferrari at length in the hypercar class already, but they are, of course, bringing an LMGT3 program as well. So they'll be make an impression on the championship this year after finishing third in the team's championship behind the 2 Manthey cars that won that. And they also won the final 2 races of the season with each car. So the Vista AF Corsa number 21 will be driven by Francois Hariot, Simon Mann, and Alessio Rivera. And the number 54 car will be driven by Francesco Castellacci, Thomas Floor, and Davide Rigon. So these are the 2, I believe they're still silver this year. So these are the 2 silver AF Corsa 296s. And they were competitive last year but weren't able to beat Porsche. And they will, of course, be out for blood in LMGT3 this year. AF Corsa, of course, running effectively the entire Ferrari program in the World Endurance Championship. Of course, running the 2 factory 499Ps as well as the customer car and the 2 GT3 cars as well. Do we think Ferrari are contenders in LMGT3 as well as Hypercar this year?
Well, there's certainly contenders in the looks department because, well, I can't resist a shiny chrome car.
It's Ferrari. My girlfriend would kill me if I didn't say they would do well. So sure.
Then there you go.
Plus chrome Ferrari.
Yeah, no, it's fantastic. So we have we haven't mentioned every single entry on the list. We've talked quite a bit about a number of different entries throughout the running of the show so far, but those are the entries that we haven't talked about as much as we have done in previous episodes, and that is effectively the preview section of the show done. Let's move on to some predictions, shall we? I'd like to see what people have. We'll start with the Hypercar Drivers' Championship. Who would like to go first for this one?
Chris,
who are you pointing?
You're pointing at the screen, but which
I'm
one of us?
pointing at the Caitlin.
At the me? Oh, okay.
Who is
right.
over there somewhere.
Well, first of all, are all of these... Okay, so I'm at a disadvantage here because I haven't watched anywhere near as much World Endurance Championship racing as these other two. So please don't crucify me if I do something stupid here or if I say something stupid. Are all of these Hypercar entries that I'm seeing on Wikipedia, are they all full season entries? Are there any, like...
Yeah.
Okay, so there are no, like, Le Mans only entries or whatever?
There will be, but they won't be... I'm assuming there will be, but I don't think they'll be...
They won't be up there yet.
Not in the top
Okay.
class, no.
Is Action Express coming over this year to Le Mans? Do we know?
Actually, no, I tell a lie, yes. I think there's going to be a Cadillac for Wayne Taylor Racing and for Action Express.
We'll do that in the Le Mans preview, but basically everything that we've gone through,
Okay.
they're doing the full season. So every car is doing the full season, but not necessarily every driver, because some of the hypercar teams are only running 2 drivers for the full season and drafting in a third. So, for instance, Aston Martin and Porsche are both doing that. They're bringing in third drivers for select rounds.
Okay, so my thought process when it came to my predictions for Hypercar is that I had no idea because I don't know enough about this, and I also I know there are a bunch of teams that it could be a bunch of teams that could be competitive, but I really can't make much of an educated guess. So I decided to go bold and back the number 38 Cadillac with Earl Bamber, Sebastian Bourdais, and Jenson Button. Specifically, I know this is bold. I know that they haven't been competitive in terms of like the outright championship in the past, but like, can you imagine 2-time world champion Jenson Button? Like, that,
It'd be fantastic.
I don't know how realistic this is. I genuinely don't know who is the most likely team to win or whatever. But I know what team would get the biggest reaction if they did.
Yeah. Okay, so Cadillac has had some decent results throughout their so let's not forget, in the first year, I believe they were third at Le Mans. And this was the year that Toyota was still very dominant, as were Ferrari. But in the hands of Chip Ganassi, they were able to finish third at Le Mans, and Earl Bamber was also part of that lineup as well. So Cadillac, they've had some good results. They haven't been up the top as much as Porsche, Ferrari, and Toyota necessarily have. But when that car's running well, it runs well. Let's put it that way. So that's an interesting prediction.
If nothing else, if they don't win the World Endurance Championship, which let's face it, they probably won't, I can genuinely see them winning Le Mans. Genuinely.
Interesting. Okay, so if you're saying that Jota are going to win the Drivers' Championship, do you think both cars will be consistent enough to win the manufacturers for Cadillac?
I don't know enough about this. You guys have a definite advantage in terms of this. Maybe. I also think there are more Porsches in the championship, so like just by statistics, maybe Porsche. But like, I don't know. Sorry.
Fair enough. Do you want to, out of the 2 cars in privateer between AF Corsa and Proton, do you want to take a stab at which of those 2 it's going to be?
AF Corsa. I'm sorry. That one's a bit simpler for me. AF Corsa.
Okay, and LMGT3, who do you reckon?
I have got down. Okay, so I kind of gave this away earlier, but I've got down the 46 BMW, Amador Harthy, Alexander Rossi, and Kelvin van der Linde. Obviously, they did very, very well. Well, WRT have done very, very well in everything they've put their mind to so far this season. I think Rossi is getting better and better. Kelvin van der Linde, I may not be his biggest fan, as previously discussed in this series, but he is clearly very good. Amador Harthy is a little bit of a question mark, but I also think that he is improving from what I've seen of him. And I think there's so much fan support behind that car as well that, like, if that means anything, if it really is an extra team member or whatever, like, you know, who's to say that won't help them win the championship as well. However, I do have one very specific prediction for the Qatar race. Do you want to hear that?
Yep, let's hear it.
Okay, so it's an 1812, so I predict that Napoleon will attempt to invade the Russian Empire, only to be heroically fended off and defeated by the soldiers of Emperor Alexander I, to be commemorated 70 years later in a classical overture written by Tchaikovsky. How accurate do you think that might be?
What is... I'm sorry, Caitlin, you have to answer it in the form of a question.
Oh,
Okay.
that's perfect. I think that's it's bold, but
That's the pull quote of this episode.
I'll reappropriate a Murray Walker quote that says anything can happen in motorsport, and it usually does. And Napoleon rocking up, not impossible, unlikely, but not impossible. Chris, I'm going to throw you under the bus. Let's hear your predictions for hypercar drivers.
Well, first of all, the Tchaikovsky 1812 overture was a genuine banger. That was a bop. I'll tell you. That was a bop. Okay, so for the championship, I have three potentials.
Yeah.
7 Toyota.
Wait, hang on. Are you saying 3 predictions for hypercar drivers?
Yes.
You would be... You'd be a terrible fortune teller. So you sit somebody down and say, I think one of 3 things will happen to you.
No. That makes you a brilliant fortune teller. The trick to being a good fortune teller is genuinely to say things that are so broad that people can kind of apply any outcome and go, yes, this was predicted in this cryptic message. That's how it works. It's
one of
I
the
can't remember
3
the name for it.
One of the 3 cryptic messages that the fortune teller gave us. Right,
Listen,
Chris.
I grew up with Miss Cleo. Okay, I know her. I know her mannerisms like the back of my hand. Hey,
Okay, right. Let's hear predictions, and I'll make a mental note to rein you in on the number of predictions you get next time. Right, continue.
Don't make me take you to church, young man. Anyway, the 7 Toyota, 50 Ferrari, and 6 and number 5 Porsche.
You've basically predicted like literally half of the grid. Like
one of each. That's how competitive this championship is.
Oh goodness me! Right, okay.
So
One of those might be right.
So there was me going, I don't know which one to pick. I don't know what I'm doing. And Chris is like, all of them.
He's chosen like 3 out of the 18 cars, and then possibly like three cars from historically the 3 strongest teams at the moment. Okay, right.
Only 3?
For your hypercar manufacturers, well, we already know what the answer to this one's going to be, right?
Toyota.
Humorous anyway. You think it's going to be Toyota for hypercar manufacturers?
But it'll be close.
Right, and that's your one prediction for that one?
Yes.
Okay, right. Privateers, Proton or AF Corsa?
AF Corsa.
Okay,
they'll get a couple wins, I think. They'll get a win
overall wins.
Overall.
Like overall. Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Okay.
I mean, they won last year. Coda.
And an LMGT3.
33 TF Sport Corvette or 31 WRT BMW.
That's a good shout with the Corvette, actually.
And the 31,
I think that's really
winning
good.
Le Mans.
And that's your bonus prediction. Okay, fantastic. Right, here are my predictions. and I've chosen one for each class. So I think that the Hypercar Drivers' Championship is going to be won by the number 6 Porsche Penske Motorsport car. This car is being driven by Kevin Estre, Lawrence Vantour, and Matt Campbell on occasion. I think that Porsche, this will be Porsche's year in Hypercar, and I think they're going to wrap up Hypercar manufacturers as well. Privateer Championship, I'm sticking to my guns on this one, or sticking with the general consensus, really, and I'm saying it's the 83 AF Corsa car that's going to win. This is the Ferrari team, and they're going to win Privateers, so actually all three of us think that's going to be the case.
Yeah.
And I think in LMGT3, the number 46 Team WRT car is going to win that one. I think BMW have, and especially WRT with the M4, have had such a strong start to the year across endurance racing that I think they'll be able to carry it across. And as a bonus prediction, I think this year will be the year of the Porsche at Le Mans, and the 963 will finally win overall. And that, ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, and everybody in between, is your FIA World Endurance Championship preview for the Motorsport Recently show. We've run over time anyway, so we may as well go a little bit longer. Let's hear it for some what, Caitlin Penny?
Miscellaneous stories and points that we missed and therefore recovering now, TM. Bing!
Oh, that was perfectly in time over the video call. That was brilliant, guys. Well done. Okay, and Caitlin, after having to sit through sports car content for an hour and 15 minutes at the time of recording, you get to speak about your specialist subject.
Woo! Okay, so there's been some Formula 1 news. McLaren, Williams and Ferrari have already completed shakedown runs in their 2025 F1 cars. I can now also add Haas to that list, so we've seen 4 different cars out on track so far. McLaren, I believe, were first. They sported a very striking Camry livery, and as a result of this Camry livery, there wasn't really that much that we could pick up on in terms of the bodywork or anything like that. Some internet sleuths have been like, oh, it has a slightly different side pod shape than last year's car and stuff like that. And I look at that and I go, what am I supposed to take from that? Like, I don't know. Anyway, Williams has, of course, got a new title sponsor. We spoke about that last week. They've already been out on track for their shakedown run. Ferrari today actually invited a bunch of enthusiasts, a select few, tifosi down to the Maranello circuit. And there's been some lovely videos of Charles Leclerc and Lewis Hamilton going around on their quote unquote filming day, waving to the crowd and all of that. I've put down a note here. Ferrari has now switched to pull rod suspension from their traditional push rod suspension. Now, I am not an engineering geek. I can tell you what that looks like. Basically, push rod suspension is kind of like almost like a mountain shape. You have the two kind of suspension uprights go upright. They point towards the car and they slope down. On a pull rod suspension, it's the other way. They kind of go up like a V shape. So Ferrari, the teams have kind of traditionally kind of jumped forth and back between the two different designs. What that actually means for the car, how it handles that kind of thing, I have no idea. I just know that this is a thing that different designers have different philosophies about, and that Ferrari has clearly changed its philosophy. Ferrari has said that this year's car is going to be 99% new. They all kind of say that, but, it's interesting to note that with this being the last year of Formula One's current regulations before the big old shake-up in 2026, the teams are still going aggressive for this year. McLaren and Aston Martin have both also said that they've gone for some quite radically different designs for this year as well. So that is very, very interesting indeed, because that could have influences, or could influence not just this season but next season as well. As for the Haas that did a shakedown run at Silverstone, they had the advantage of running in wet conditions. They've had a little bit of wet weather running already, and they made the mistake of running in the livery that they were going to unveil at the F175 event, and there was a budding photographer who managed to snap a photo and it got leaked. So Yes, unfortunately, Formula One has had its Haas pictures leaked online. But the F175 event was a big success. There have been a lot of memes that have come out of it. There's been a lot of good sentiment. That took place just last night. I watched it. It was actually pretty cool. Little bit of cringe involved. Little bit of stop with the pomp and circumstance. We just want to see the cars, you know. But anyway, I think for what it was a decent show. I believe we are going to be talking about that more next week if we can get a certain special guest on board. There's a little teaser for you guys.
If we get a guest, we'll do it.
Yes.
Well, I think we'll do it anyway. We'll do it anyway because it should be talked about. But
we'll need
it'd be a bit good if we get a guest. Okay.
But, it's the reason I personally decided not to go is because obviously it's mainly liveries that were being revealed rather than actual cars, and if I'm gonna fork out that much money for an event, I want it to have a little bit more substance than that. Like, I don't want to just be there to go, ooh, look at the pretty colours. I want to actually kind of delve into what have you done differently for this year? What should I look for on the car? That kind of thing. But anyway, there's that. But yeah, that's the Formula One news that we've got for this week. I'm sorry that I can't cover it in more detail than Ferrari suspension now looks like a V rather than a mountain, whatever. But like, there you go. And I will now hand back over to you because the Daytona 500 happened, and while I did watch that, I think you guys know a bit more about that.
I will say on the pull rod thing, he was great in I Love You, Man.
Pull rod?
Yes, he was great in I Love You, Man.
We were talking about that before the show, and it all resulted in nonsense. So we'll talk about something that actually makes sense. So
we're talking about NASCAR?
We are. Yeah, fair enough. So we had the Daytona 500, and that was, of course, won by William Byron, who was 9th at the beginning of the last lap, was 7th when the wreck started. The seas parted for William Byron, and he won the Daytona 500 after... I'm looking at the stage results at the moment. He was 10th at the end of stage 1, was not in the top 10 at stage 2, and then won the race. So
this always happens. That's just how the Daytona 500 is. The first, 190 laps are really boring, and then the last 10 laps, there's like a million wrecks resulting in 20 overtimes, and then they all crash their way across the line, and whoever survives wins. That's just how it works.
I think a lot of people were pretty excited to see the 24 car back in victory lane, though.
All 3 of them. Yeah, all I have to say is, and I'm gonna get on my sleep-deprived high horse here.
Oh, God.
That was seriously one of the worst Daytona 500s I have ever seen, and I've watched it since 1999. That was one of the worst Daytona 500s I have ever personally seen. It was...
Well, I've watched it since 2022, and I agree.
It was full of... It was full of horrendous driving standards, worse officiating, glazing... Fox coverage, Fox's abysmal coverage. The entire Speed Weeks was a shambles. And then you have the fact that for the second straight time, the president comes in and they're not able to run 10 laps because he has a vanity. He basically they had to move the schedule up to 1:30. They got the green flag at 2 because Trump needed his vanity lap around the track.
Tell us how you really feel.
And
careful, Chris. You'll summon the commenter, TM.
Oh my goodness. Well, at least you said it at the end of the show, so at least we don't lose viewer retention. Like, at least we get our view duration up. Okay, terrible Daytona.
But, and it was not just the 500, but the Speed Weeks in general was awful. Although there was some good stuff. There were some good things that came out of it. For one, the Xfinity Series coverage on the CW. I saw it, and they really impressed me. Like, they put effort into the TV coverage. Like, honest to God effort. And I'm so happy about that, and like everything just clicked with that, like, that commentary team of Adam Alexander, Jamie McMurray, and Friday night's Truck Series winner Parker Kligerman.
I will hear no opposing viewpoints on that.
Basically, they were dynamos in the booth. The ARCA race had a great win for short track racing in North America with Brendan Queen, aka Butterbean.
Butterbean Queen, the best name ever.
Yes, and he's also a very stout little driver as well. He's won the Cars Tour Championship. He won one of the first races back at North Wilkesboro after they reopened, and I just hope he got his Waffle House with his chocolate milk, Waffle House that he said he was going to do in the interview.
But we all know who the real winner of the ARCA race was.
Absolutely, Cletus McFarland.
Yep.
That man gave one of, if not the greatest interview, or not one of the greatest NASCAR-related TV sound bites since the pastor at the Nashville NASCAR Nationwide Series race in, I think, 2009 or 2008, where he was basically you remember the one I'm talking about, like, "Oh, God bless me and my smoking hot wife," like that. Honestly, Cletus needs to A, have a full-time ARCA deal, and B needs to be in the booth, because the stuff that man was saying, he was basically like, I think that we need to put that in the description, like a link to his interview in the description, because this was just top notch.
I think he needs to be mic'd up at all times and just commentate while driving.
Hear, hear. Hear, hear.
Fair enough.
He actually, and when he crashed, and by the way, the fans, Cletus's fans were going after Amber Balkan after, she unfortunately was starting one of those, both of the wrecks that he was in. He actually said, basically they patched things up, everything. She called to apologize. Everything's good from there. I will say, though, the last thing he said before they turned the onboard camera feed off, because they put an onboard camera feed in Cletus's car. The last thing he said was, as he got out of the car, "So sorry, guys." The man
I think that's very nice, yeah.
Man is a legend. I love that man. He's just...
Well, at least we are not a positive with the Daytona coverage. We are severely over time now, so we'll try and get through these last few things very, very quickly. Bit of Formula E news. We had some racing from Jeddah. No, not Jedi. Jeddah. No Luke Skywalker involved here. Instead, it was Maximilian Gunter who won race 1 at Jeddah, overtaking Oliver Rowland on the final lap to win that run. And Rowland won race 2 and extends his championship lead. And we have some IndyCar news to cap us off with Rinus VeeKay driving for Dale Coyne Racing full-time in 2025 and picking up the final remaining full-time seat. So there you go. That's all of the IndyCar and Formula E news to round us off. We'll finish off with a listener comment with regular contributor Robin Tails Fighter, right into us again,
friend of the
who
show.
says, friend of the show, who says, thank you for the shout out. I'm actually heading to a model car convention this weekend where I'm hoping to pick up some extra GR86s to paint. So with a bit of luck, the Triple Crown racing car should be finished in a couple of weeks. And he also said he'd be happy to come on the show in the future. There was also another comment with Caitlin saying Egypt in reference to her previous comment. And on that note, it is time to end. Thank you very much for sticking with us for our World Endurance Championship preview, as well as our miscellaneous stories and points we missed, and therefore our covering beforehand. TM Bing. My name has been Jack McKenzie, and as usual, I've been joined on the mic by the wonderful Chris Whitfield and Caitlin Penny commentary, and you have been listening to the Motorsport Recently Show. Please like, subscribe, and comment on the YouTube video, and leave us a 5-star review and some comments as well on Spotify as well. We could use the engagement, but aside from that, we'll see you next time. Goodbye.
Ta-ta.
Ta-ra. Raise hell, praise Dale.